WGRV.
Good morning. It's 10 minutes past 10 o'clock at WGRV, and we're joined in our studios this morning by the manager of the Greeneville Light and Power System, Bill Carroll. Good morning, Bill. How are you today?
Good morning, Ron. I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
You've come in on a good day today to talk about a lot of things, but we'll get off track to begin with. You've got 40-mile and 50-mile-an-hour winds, and Ray and I talk a lot about hats off to the employees of all the public works and departments that have to get out in the worst of weathers. The water department has to be out when it's 20 degrees and in holes of water, and the road department has to drive around on slick roads. And we talk about the Greeneville Light and Power employees getting out in storms and in every kind of condition. Hats off to them, and thank you all for the job that you all do.
Well, appreciate the thought. You're exactly right. The worse it gets, the more likely folks are going to have to be out in that stuff. So our guys, the road department people, the water system people, they do an excellent job keeping services to this community, and proud to be a little part of that.
I know it's easy for people to get upset when they get their tree trimmed back, but I think what they don't realize on the other end is how far fewer times they are without power because of that. And I can tell you that from a personal standpoint, because of all the times that we used to lose power to our transmitter. Anytime it got windy around the mountains, a tree would be down or a limb would be down, and the reliability of the power system now is very impressive.
Well, thank you. We have doubled down on our tree trimming efforts over the last 10, 15 years. We do a 5-year cycle. We try to get around to every circuit at least once every 5 years, and our reliability indexes are showing that it's making a difference. Last night, unfortunately, there were 300, 400 people that were affected by the winds, but not too many years ago, that could have been 4,000 or 5,000 easily.
It would. If you think back to the blizzard, how many limbs came down at that time and how many people were without power, that makes a big difference. So
well, the blizzards, all bets are off in the blizzard. You can't trim enough trees to prevent against a blizzard. But generally speaking, we've got a decent right-of-way program, and we appreciate people cooperating with us to let us get that done.
Well, we appreciate all that your guys do out there working pretty hard. You're here today, though, to talk about a bit of a change that's going to go on with the Greeneville Light and Power kind of transitioning over to what we call the Greeneville Energy Authority. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What, in the broadest sense, Bill, what is that? What's going to happen? And then we'll go into the details of that as we talk a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, the Greeneville Light and Power System is transitioning, as you mentioned, to become the Greeneville Energy Authority. Back in November, the town's Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved a certificate of incorporation for that new entity, the Greeneville Energy Authority, that sets out a couple of purposes for it to do, one being electric services, which is what we do now as the Greeneville Light and Power System, and the other would allow us to look into telecommunications or broadband as a possibility.
So when did Greeneville Light and Power actually start? When was that formed as an agency?
Greeneville Light and Power goes back to 1945, created to take advantage of the TVA power. TVA fired up somewhere in the middle 1930s. Greeneville was a late adopter. A lot of systems jumped in the 30s and early 40s, but TVA power hit this area through the Greeneville Light and Power System in the spring of 1945.
I think it's fairly obvious what you all do. The TVA generates that power. They send it down a transmission line to you, and then you distribute it to the people in Greene County. That's all you can do as Greeneville Light and Power. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. We can't generate, we can't own generation assets. We just do purchase from TVA. 3 different delivery points that we buy from. We're building a 4th one to increase our reliability, and then we do distribute it to the county through about 27 distribution substations.
When you say you buy the electricity from TVA, is it kind of like going to the gas pump for a motorist? You buy it at whatever rate they set? I mean, they determine what the cost of electricity is. Is that right?
That is a great question. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Certainly, they do set the rates. There's 2 components of our wholesale power rate. There is the energy that's used by our customers and the energy that's consumed by our equipment. That's the energy losses that we have to pay for. And then there's a demand charge, which is based on how intense the demand for power is during any given hour in a month. We've had hours when it is extremely cold where our wholesale power bill jumped up by $3 million in 1 hour.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. The demand charges, and TVA has reason for that. They have to build generation, they have to build transmission lines to put out the maximum power this whole region, this whole valley can consume. and they have to pay for that somehow. So they choose to do that through demand charges. That can be a killer, and I don't mean this like it may come out, but the best month for a local power company like us would be one where it is moderately cold all month. We sell a lot of energy that way. People keep warm, everybody enjoys it, and then we get back to whatever normal weather is. A terrible month is when you have a couple of extremely cold days. The demand charge is that $3 million mark, and it warms up, and then there is no energy sales for Greeneville Light and Power System to recover that huge demand charge.
Okay. So like last year, we had that stretch of 5 or 6 days where it's single digits and everybody's meters spinning.
Yes, all those meters are running intensely. The demand charge, that was one of our $3 million hours back last year when it was so cold. We did not lose money for the month because it was moderately cold and there was enough energy sales for us to recover that. So we watched that all the time, demand charges and energy use, and then we do have a little markup on what we pay TVA so that we can have emergency services. We can operate the distribution system, but we operate the whole system on about 12 cents out of the dollar.
The other 88 cents being TVA's
goes
charge.
Back to TVA. It varies. It depends on the demand charge and the intensity. But on average, 87, 88 cents of every dollar goes back to TVA for that wholesale power bill. And not a lot of people know that. We operate on a pretty tight margin.
And that 12 cents is what puts up the poles and strings the wire and pays for the guys to be out working up in the bucket trucks and everything else.
Everything else. Pays the postage for us to mail your bill to you. Yeah. Everything that happens there comes out of that 12 cents. That's correct.
As far as the rates around here, I think Greeneville and Greene County, you've got some of the lower rates of the region, don't you, for power consumption?
We periodically compare rates with our neighbors and with people across the valley, especially systems of our size, and we always come out in the cheaper third as compared to the other 154 power systems that buy from TVA. We are always in the lower third of that.
So that's kind of what Greeneville Light and Power is and does. And when you talk about this new Greeneville Energy Authority, is it fair to say that kind of gives you the ability to expand into other areas that were not in existence when Greeneville Light and Power was originally chartered?
Yeah, and that's what we're getting ready for. There's not an imminent opportunity right here on our doorstep knocking and saying you need to do this, you need to do that. You're going to save a lot of money or you're going to have a great opportunity, but they're there. The technology has changed to the point where everything is blended now. You've got the cell phones, the laptops, smart thermostats, microgrids, solar power, wind power. All this stuff is morphed together, so it is very difficult to tell one from another, and the Greeneville Light and Power Systems business model, the format, its bones date back to the 30s when nobody had ever heard of any of those things. Nobody ever heard of broadband or internet. We can explore those things now with more flexibility as an authority than we could have as just strictly part of the municipality.
You've gone from having to have people physically go to every house in Greene County every single month and read the meters to being able to read those remotely.
Yes, sir. In 2004, we were one of the earlier systems in the region, in the valley, to convert to automated meter reading, AMI, automated meter infrastructure. And we finished that in 2004. It was the smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, one of the reasons in there was personnel injury. Dog bites used to be our most frequent injuries. So, that wasn't the reason we did it. We did it to save money over the long haul, but that was a side benefit that nobody foresaw. So today, we read every meter 3 times a day. And then we've got the information out for customers to look at their daily usage, weekly usage, whatever they like. It was unheard of 15, 20 years ago. You just couldn't do that.
Well, where I'm going with that is you already almost have a large amount of the infrastructure needed to get into other avenues and venues. You've already got poles and wires. You've got some method of transmitting data from one point to the other. And we'll get into more of this in a little bit about cable and internet and things that maybe the Energy Authority could do. But you've got a leg up on anybody else that wanted to do anything like that. You've already got a significant portion of that in place.
Well, the poles are there, obviously, and then the telephone companies and the cable companies have, by different legislative acts, the right to be on our poles. They pay a small fee to be on our poles. But if we do any other business ventures, that entity would also have to pay a fee to be on Light and Power's pole. So there's no free ride. If we do get into something else, we have to compete on the same basis that the incumbents compete.
Why does there have to be, for what legal standpoint or legal reasons do you have to have the energy authority versus Light and Power? Does the Light and Power charter say, I mean, it doesn't, maybe it doesn't say you can't do something, but if you're not granted permission from the state, you can't branch out into those things.
Ron, that's exactly the deal. The flexibility piece is exactly what the authority brings. As you said, cities, towns, municipalities, whatever you want to call them, can do many things, but they can't do it unless the state specifically authorizes it. The Energy Authority, and authority's been around for a while. We'll go back into the history on it, but two years ago, the state of Tennessee recognized that utilities and towns needed more flexibility, so they specifically wrote into the Act, the Tennessee Municipal Energy Authority Act, flexibility. You can clearly do joint ventures, cooperative efforts that help the authority accomplish its stated purposes. That's as broad as it can get. That's the flexibility that we're looking for going forward. Again, there's not an opportunity standing here right now today that I can tell you that we're going to jump on and use, but we're in the game now.
I know there are. We cover the football games going up to, I guess it was Sullivan Central, and is it the Bristol Power Company has, and I don't want to get bogged down in the details of what they do or don't do, but I know they've got the ability to provide cable. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And internet?
Yes,
to the customers
they
of
do.
Southwest Virginia and Northeast Tennessee, Sullivan County, or that region up there.
Yes.
So people there have some competition for what everybody out there will say is becoming an increasing burden of what their entertainment on the television and internet costs.
There are several municipalities around the state that are doing that and doing that successfully. Some of them are looking into the authority status. Some may function very well without it. The authority status will let us give the best shot at providing those services to this community. We're probably going to look for some kind of a joint effort arrangement with someone. We can talk about the cost in a minute if you want to of that when we get into the broadband piece. But yes, municipalities by state mandate were given that authority several years ago because they didn't have it in the original act that created them.
Is this the end of Greeneville Light and Power? Is it going to become eventually? It's much more than just a name change, but will Greeneville Light and Power cease to exist?
On paper, yes, but in practicality, no. The target date for the first live date for the Greeneville Energy Authority will be July the 1st of 2019. So in theory, at midnight on June 30th of 2019, the Greeneville Light and Power System Board ceases to exist. It becomes the Greeneville Energy Authority Board. As part of the first meeting of the Energy Authority Board, which will happen on January the 28th, that body, I believe, will petition the Tennessee Secretary of State for permission to continue doing business as the Greeneville Light and Power System. That name has proudly served this community for 70-odd years. There's no reason to dispose of that name. It keeps this transparent to the customers. In fact, we probably don't even have to print new business cards. It is, I think, in our case, the wise thing to do. Others have chosen a different route, but that works for us. So will the Greeneville Light and Power System disappear? No, but functionally, it will be the Greeneville Energy Authority doing business as the Greeneville Light and Power System.
We're talking this morning with Greeneville Light and Power Manager Bill Carroll. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll ask the big question, is this going to mean more for the rate customers? The answer is no. What changes will the customers see, and what does that enable, and how does that free up and benefit the people of Greeneville and Greene County? We'll talk with Bill Carroll more about that in just a moment as our interview continues here on WGRV. 99.5 FM WGRV. We're talking this morning with Greeneville Light and Power Manager Bill Carroll about the changeover from the Greeneville Light and Power to the Greeneville Energy Authority. And Bill, I think we laid a pretty decent groundwork on kind of what's going to happen. Everybody, the main question they want to know is this going to cost me more? Is my electric bill going to go up because of this?
No, not at all. No one will know the difference one way or the other.
Not one penny.
Not one penny. It will not change anything that Greeneville Light and Power System does today or in the end of June, the 1st of July. In fact, at its initial meeting, the Greeneville Energy Authority Board on January 28th will adopt the current set of rates that Greeneville Light and Power System uses through TVA. They'll adopt the practices and policies that affect the customer, the fees and charges. So everything will transfer over exactly as it is. The rates will be whatever they will be in June and July based on what TVA charges the Greeneville Light and Power System.
Because in part, the Greeneville Energy Authority it's new, but it's not being created to change what Greeneville Light and Power does or charges or anything about power or electricity consumption for the customers of Greene County.
That is absolutely correct, and that's part of the reason that we kept the name. This is a public entity. It belongs to the public, and that's why we're making this change known. I think we could have done this. We shouldn't and didn't do this behind the scenes. Nobody will ever know the difference.
Right.
Employees would never know the difference. It doesn't affect their pay. It doesn't affect their benefits, their work hours. It does not affect customer rates, the practices that we use, the policies that we have. It is a structural change to give us more flexibility to look at future challenges. Customers would never know the difference, but they need to know what's happening.
So it's always kind of, I've known better, but it still has always kind of seemed like the Greeneville Light and Power System was a department of the town of Greeneville. But that's not an accurate way of saying it, and the Greeneville Energy Authority is not that either.
It is accurate on the first case. The town has chosen to let the Greeneville Light and Power System operate under an independent utility board, the Greeneville Light and Power Board. It was an option that the town chose. Many cities, many towns run their utility as a direct department. There are some close by to here that we could name if we need to, but it was believed, and I think they were correct, that an independent board would make maybe better decisions if they focused only on energy needs, and that has proven to be the case so far. But technically, the Greeneville Light and Power System is an agency of the town of Greeneville.
And this dates back to the 30s and 40s with the origination of it, when the county was a much different place. It was. The customer base was in it.
Customer base was out in the county.
70,000 people.
Well, yeah, it wasn't that many people. I think there were a lot of customers in the county. Neither you nor I were here then, but back in 1945, the East Tennessee Electric System was purchased with bonds issued by the town of Greeneville. That is how this happened. That's why the town owns it. The residents, the ratepayers of the town back in the 40s took the gamble on buying it. That's why the town controls the Greeneville Light and Power System. It just happened that they bought enough facilities to serve the entire county rather than just the city limits. There are a number of county-wide municipalities in the state. There are a number that just serve their town limits. We're fortunate that we have a good customer base, but it sometimes gets confusing as to why the city has any jurisdiction out in the county. But that's why, because originally the taxpayers of the town of Greeneville took the risk to buy the system.
All right. So as Joe, citizen of Greene County, when I hear about this, what I think is this enables another, maybe years down the road, months, I don't know how long, and you can guesstimate on that if you want to, but I'm not asking you to necessarily. Another source for cable or internet or services that right now are predominantly, I won't say they're a monopoly, but there are no options for who you get cable from. There are very few options on who you can get internet from, and with that, I think everybody talks about the price. We were talking in the back this morning about all these little fees here and there that keep creeping up, and boy, if there was somebody that could come in and say, we've got a similar product at this price, it creates a healthy competition. So can you eventually provide cable and internet, and what other services could the Greeneville Energy Authority provide?
Let me do that one first about what services the Energy Authority could provide, and then we'll dig down into the internet opportunities. The town, again, is the one that created the Greeneville Energy Authority. Basically, they're cutting the cord between the town and the Greeneville Light and Power System, or the Energy Authority, because they've now authorized this Energy Authority to be a political subdivision of the state rather than a political subdivision of the town.
Okay.
So the town retains control because they ultimately approve board members for the Energy Authority, and so that they still will always be the associated municipality and have the ultimate say on board members. But yes, the short answer is yes, there are other services that can be provided because you're an authority. The state wrote it up very, very flexibly, but the town, in the certificate of incorporation, said, no, we only want you to do electric, which you already do very well, and then we'd like you to have the possibility of doing internet, telecommunications, broadband, phone. All those things come under the broad heading of telecommunications. So those are the only two purposes that this entity can undertake. If somewhere down the line someone wishes to add services, there is an entirely transparent and a pretty robust process to make changes in that certificate of incorporation. So nobody can sneak another service in or take a service away. It is right now telecom and electric service, and that's it. Now, towards the telecom opportunity, we do have more flexibility now to go out and do the joint efforts and the combined cooperative efforts and joint projects with other entities, and that does make it easier to do that. We've got a huge service territory. As you know, Greene County is one of the top 10 physically biggest counties in the state, I believe, and we have 2,200 miles of line to serve the community, high voltage lines to serve the community, and hundreds of miles of low voltage lines. We would have to duplicate that footprint with fiber optic to get really good internet service to every resident, every business in the community, and we're talking 3,000 plus miles of fiber that we'd have to hang on poles.
This will stop you there and say that again. 3,000 miles.
Yes,
because I've wondered that too. How many miles of wire are there on your system?
As I said, we've got 2,200 miles of high voltage lines, which is the poles down the street, the 7,200 volts, 12,000 phase to phase. And then hundreds of miles of the low voltage lines to serve your house, to drop off to each individual meter. And that has to be duplicated with fiber to get true fiber to the home service, which is where you get the really high-speed internet capabilities. And I don't think anybody in the county has that right now. There's some fiber by some of the providers, but we would be looking at fiber to the home is what this is called. And it is indeed 3,000 miles, and I almost choke when I say it.
That's a wire from here to California almost.
And I think you can come part of the way back.
Come part of the way back,
yes, sir. So huge investment. And one of the things that dawned on us during this is that we're actually duplicating our footprint that's taken us 70-something years to build over a 5 or 6 year period. By doing this, to get to every home with another set of wire, another type of wire, is a huge undertaking. Brings huge costs with it too. So some of the estimates right now to cover the county and to operate this thing for the first couple of years is $85 to $90 million. And yes, that is indeed $1 million. And that's a huge decision for this authority board or the Greeneville Light and Power Board or for any entity to make. We've gone very deliberately, very slowly with investigating this, looking at every up and down, every facet of it. And right now we don't have a decision yet. We'd love to do this as a community service, but it has to break even. So there's the rub. What rates do you charge to make it attractive? And we're not trying to make any money, but it must break even. It has to be an independent entity financially that cannot be subsidized by the electric system.
That's what I was going to get at, because you said that the other day when we were talking about the interview today. This is not anything where the cost is passed on to customers of another, let's say, division.
Not at all.
Your power customers don't have to subsidize what you do in the future.
They legally cannot subsidize the broadband effort at all. So this thing has to be self-supporting. That means that the employees have to be paid. The material has to be purchased, all from revenues that we might generate from offering services. So it is a huge project to digest, and we've been looking at it seriously for probably a year. it may be several more months before there's enough information to have a decision. We've looked at multiple business models. We've looked at multiple options about phasing it in, starting slowly. In fact, yesterday we even explored the possibility of starting even slower to try to see if it works, because it is public funds, the public funds at risk. One must be exceptionally careful with that.
We're talking this morning with Greeneville Light and Power Manager Bill Carroll about the new Greeneville Energy Authority. We'll take one more break and come back and finish our discussion about the new Greeneville Energy Authority right after this. WGRV, we're talking this morning with Greeneville Light and Power Manager Bill Carroll. Will you soon be the Greeneville Energy Authority Manager, Bill Carroll? Are you going to keep your job?
I certainly hope so. On the 28th, the Greeneville Energy Authority Board will make that decision. The law says, that the act that created it says it must be the president and CEO of the Energy Authority. That sounds a little pompous to me, but if that's what it is, I'd certainly like to be in the running for that.
You said earlier today is your 29th anniversary of coming to Greeneville.
Actually, today is the 29th anniversary of my work here in this community. I have loved nearly every minute of it. There's some blizzards and some other things that may have not been perfect days, but I've been blessed to be here.
We're talking this morning about the new Greeneville Energy Authority that's being created. What's the benefit for the town, Bill, or is there one? Or
Yes, there is. The town is really not giving up anything at all. It might seem like the town has, but as we mentioned before, the town will exercise ultimate control over the authority board. Town will still get the same in lieu of tax payments that the Greeneville Light and Power System makes now. Same formula, no change in the, quote, income from its operating arm from the electric system. By the way, we do not pay property taxes or sales taxes, but we pay an in lieu of tax. It's based on a state formula to be sure that that's fairly taken care of, and that will not change. The biggest benefit for the town, if we do get into debt, which would probably have to get into some debt with the internet effort, the broadband effort, it would not be on the town's books at all. Whereas a division of the town, it certainly would. So that would affect their ability to borrow, their bond rating, their credit worthiness. And frankly, I'm sure they're glad to avoid that if they can.
Yeah.
And that was part of the discussion with the town, that they are no longer liable for anything done by the authority.
So your next step is the actual formal creation, and then I guess you start as the Greeneville Energy Authority, really kind of getting down to brass tacks and figuring out timelines and how deeply you want to invest and how quickly and all that.
You're right. It is created. It's a go. The go button has already been pushed with the certificate of authority, certificate of incorporation being adopted by the town, and it was approved by the Tennessee Secretary of State in December. So it's a go. There is the Greeneville Energy Authority. Its first date of activity will be after the town formally transfers all the assets and liabilities from the Greeneville Light and Power System to the authority. The attorneys are looking at those now, and that's contracts, it's right-of-way, it's property ownership. We're coming through 73 years' worth of records to be sure that we don't leave anything behind, so that the Energy Authority picks up exactly where the Greeneville Light and Power System is today, and that transition is set for the end of June, first day of July. That date was chosen so that we would not have to do 2 audits, by the way. We could have done this much more quickly, but we made it necessary to do an audit for the Greeneville Light and Power System's last days, and then a month or 2 month or 3 month audit for the new entity, which would have, in essence, wasted money. So we opted to get it at the end of a fiscal year.
Not to diminish everything that you've spent your time talking about for the last 40 minutes, but so is it safe to say this is kind of a really, really big deal that nobody's really going to notice right away?
I think that's a good way to sum it up. As I mentioned before, we could have done this. Again, public entities don't do such things, and we never would have. We could have done it, and nobody would have known it. Employees would not know it. Customers certainly won't know the difference. The sign on the building stays the same. Business cards still say the Greeneville Light and Power System. So it is a big deal. It brings flexibility, it brings opportunities, but there will be no change to anybody on a day-to-day basis.
And you kind of hit on it there. The reason that we do this and offer this for you today, and the reason that you need to do it, it's a public entity, and you know, you all are held to a different standard of transparency, and you want people to know your meetings are open to the public. Anybody that wants to come and sit in and know what's going on every single month, they are welcome to do so.
That is exactly correct, and that does not change with the authority. The act that created the authority makes that transparency carry over to the Greeneville Energy Authority. So, any meeting of the group, public meeting, decisions made, public input is welcome. I cannot remember a time when someone from the public showed up at a meeting and was denied the opportunity to speak. So very proud of that.
I guess this is a little off that topic, but it kind of goes back to what we're saying about that this doesn't cost the taxpayer of Greene County or the consumer of electricity in Greene County 1 cent more to do this.
Right.
But I would assume that this time of year is when you probably get the most complaints. My electric bill is so high.
Right.
And without being, dismissive of people's concerns, the basic reason their bill is high is because it was so cold.
Oh, yeah,
it's you don't charge more during this time of year. You don't sneak around and run up meters in the middle of the night to make more money. You charge for what goes through the meter, and when it's 6 degrees, I think it amazes people. Once you hit, about 21, 25 degrees, somewhere in there, the change from what a heat pump will do to what a heat pump has to do to keep you warm is a whole lot more expensive. And that's where you think they get that big bump in the bill.
You are right. I couldn't have said that any better. We may need to hire you as a customer service rep to help answer people's questions, because you're bang on with it. The weather influences everything about a customer's consumption, whether they use some other fuel source or not. Their gas bill is going to be higher. They're going to use more wood. They're going to use more electricity. It is just a fact of physics. The colder it is outside, the more energy is necessary to keep it warm on the inside. We don't monkey with the rates. We certainly don't monkey with meter readings. In fact, with the electronics we have now, people can look at their own consumption, can read their own meters. Again, we read the meters 3 times a day, every day. That information is available through an application called Smart Hub. Mm-hmm. I would encourage every customer we have to sign up for Smart Hub. It brings very valuable information to your fingertips. About almost 14,000 people are already using that app. We're real happy about that. So, yeah, the bottom line is that cold weather, extremely hot weather will affect your bill. Folks notice when it goes up, but they rarely notice when it goes back down in April or
at least
October.
At least they don't call to say.
Well, we rarely get that call. I'm sure they notice and they appreciate it, and we're glad that happens. But, no, we rarely get the calls that say, hey, my bill fell in half. What's going on?
Are there still programs that Greeneville Light and Power offers? I know you through TVA. I'm sure there are ways to help people do surveys of their homes to find out ways to save that energy, and
yes,
you've got different things. Again, this is off that subject, but while you're here,
it matters because it does affect people's pocketbooks. Yes, indeed, there are those programs. We've got people in-house that can do some of those basic energy audits. There's self-energy audits that can be done through look at our website and TVA's website. And you can do a self-assessment. We can have people that can come out and help you. And then for business and industries and real complicated things, we have access to TVA experts as well.
If anybody has any questions about the Greeneville Energy Authority or the rates or anything like that, they're always welcome to pick up the phone and give Greeneville Light and Power a call. Absolutely
right. We try to answer a bunch of those proactively on our website. We do have a good bit of information there for people to look at. If someone who answers the phone can't answer you, there's a real good chance they can find somebody who can. So please call with anything that's on your mind.
Greeneville Energy Authority meeting, that'll be that's coming up, and that's going to be, I guess, the next big milestone, and it's an impressive one. And Bill, thank you again for you and the board for your foresight in saying, this is where the future is, and it gives you the opportunity to be involved in that, as opposed to 20 years from now saying, gosh, I wish we'd done that back in 2019.
Ron, that's exactly right. I mentioned earlier that there's not a great big thing we're going to tackle tomorrow, but there will be one coming up, and we'll be ready for it.
And that meeting and all are open to the public. And what time and the location, Bill?
The regular meeting of the Greeneville Light and Power System Board is the fourth Monday at 9 a.m. The first meeting of the Greeneville Energy Authority will be immediately following the adjournment of the Light and Power Board meeting, just for convenience, because the certificate of incorporation named our existing board members as the first set of board members for the authority. So when the gavel hits from the Light and Power meeting, and it typically runs 45 minutes or less, I'm predicting that the new meeting will start up about 9:45 at 110 North College Street on January 28th.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for your time this morning. And again, please pass along to all the employees. I think people take for granted when the lights are on, and when the heat's on, they certainly notice when it's not. But if you were to step back from that and realize the the few times that it's off and the short period of time, you've built and your employees have built a system where you've got the redundancy now. I know we've talked about if we were to lose power here, you can sometimes switch and feed it from the other end of the street. In some cases, you can do things that lessen the amount of time that people are without power. And I don't think people realize that we do, and I know that factories and businesses that depend on that more do. But you've done a fantastic job, and all your employees do too.
Well, thank you very much. That's what we're here for. Again, you don't like to be taken for granted, but we like to be taken for granted. You hit the switch, the lights come on, then we've done our job.
Bill Carroll, the manager of Greeneville Light and Power, congratulations, happy anniversary, and I hope you get the job in the morning.
Well, the 28th, I hope I do too. I've enjoyed it here so far, not quite ready to hang it up yet. Thank you very much for having me.
WGRV 99.5 FM.